Should I start my timer now, or should I start my timer when we actually start the show?
I think you should start it now.
Daniel counts the pre-show and his hour cutoff.
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
You go over. I'm just going to cut it off. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Man, why are you trying to put me in a box, Daniel? We've been doing this for a whole year, and you just keep putting a cap on it. You're stopping me.
We've already made people listen to you talk about cameras for 52 hours. I mean, I don't, I want to try and keep it limited a little bit. We can't have it be 53 hours.
Jeez, I just think about all the extra camera gear talk that we could have if we went like 15 minutes over.
Yeah, I mean, it would really add up, right?
It sure would.
It'd be like an extra hour a month.
Yeah, that's like bonus content.
Indeed.
If there's
maybe people would pay for that.
No, Daniel. If there's anything that I know that people love, it's free bonus content.
I mean, you're not wrong.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for.
That's what you're here for?
Yeah, the free bonus content.
The free bonus content that you were going to create.
Yes.
Yep.
I am our number one fan.
Now that I do believe.
That feels weirdly selfish. Anyways. Okay, Daniel. I bought a new bag.
Yeah, you did.
I got another Peak Design bag.
Shocking.
I can't help myself. I found a niche for it, and I just went for it. And I bought a 6-liter sling, and I'm going to talk about that later because, as you know, there is tons of camera news for us to get to.
Yes.
But first,
you're going to talk about it later, but you're also going to talk about it now.
I want to talk about my innovative new use for a capture clip.
Okay.
Because as you know, and I'm sure everyone else knows, the fantastic Peak Design 6-liter sling, not sponsored, has pieces of fabric on each side of the bag for you to mount their capture clip to.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when you take your camera out of your sling, if you don't want to put it back in your sling immediately because you're going to use it right away, you can just pop that thing onto the capture clip and it hangs on the outside of your bag. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I took a capture clip, like Arca base, and I've put it on my Nalgene, and now I can hang my Nalgene on the outside of my bag with the capture clip.
And since those capture clips are also Arca Swiss compatible, that means you can mount your Nalgene on a tripod.
Dude, the world has opened up to me. The places that I can mount my Nalgene. This is getting real. I'm
cool.
so hydrated.
If you had like a shoulder rig or something, you could mount the Nalgene on that.
I mean, now that I have an Arca Swiss plate on my Nalgene, which is a little niche, I know. I mean, like the world is my oyster. Anywhere that there's an Arca base, my bottle's going to be there. I'm going to have a camera cage for my water bottle next.
Yeah,
I'm going to get some 15mm rails.
Put some hand grips on that water bottle.
You know it.
Yep. Have a record button just in case.
It's going to improve the performance.
Yes.
And this thing needs USB-C.
Yep. With power delivery, of course.
Well, obviously.
Yes. Maybe one of those Samsung T5 clamps.
Man, if my Nalgene supported like T5 data connection, I'd be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. No kidding.
Well, maybe next year's Nalgene.
Yep. Yeah, you'll have to keep your eyes peeled for some sales on that one.
Yep. That's actually going to be the next podcast we start. It's just a Nalgene water bottle. Nalgene cast.
We're really building out our collection of niche podcasts. I mean, the softbox one I was kind of on board with, but I don't know about Nalgene's.
Okay, fine. Well, it's maybe a little too off the track for us.
Maybe it's called like the hydration podcast.
Oh, that's good. We can talk about hydration gear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Maybe we get into like camel bags.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about like different bladders and which one has like maybe the platypus one supports more drops. I don't know.
Yeah. You just have to try it out and see.
No, yeah.
You'll have to make some way too in-depth YouTube videos where you drop test all these different things.
I mean, if there's something people love on YouTube, it's drop tests.
That's true. It's very true.
Mm-hmm. You drop anything, I'd watch it.
Anything.
Yeah. Just name a thing. Watermelon?
I mean, yeah. that was about the most obvious one you could have picked. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be curious to see an Nalgene drop from like 40 feet.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, just see what happens. Throw it off a parking garage, see if it survives.
Penny off a skyscraper?
Yeah.
I can't think of something that I wouldn't want to see drop, except for like a puppy.
Yeah. Any living creature, maybe.
Yeah, which reminds me, I finally watched that movie Babadook, and spoiler alert, there's a dog murder in that movie.
Oh, no.
And I was not prepared for dog murder, and it was a lot. I was like, guys, this is one step too far.
Yeah.
I had to cover up my dog's eyes. I was like, don't look. Oh, it's horrible.
The only movie where that's okay is in John Wick, because he more than makes up for that dog.
I mean, John Wick would argue that it's not okay. It's not okay. Anyway, camera gear.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
Before you get into this, just want to preface that, on the day that we're recording this, I mean, this is iPhone day. This is GFX100 the Deuce day.
Yeah, this is like hot off the presses.
Yep. We got G9 Mark II from Panasonic. And then there's this Burano situation. I mean, there's a lot of news happening. So let's talk about the most important thing.
Which is?
I mean, it's right here.
Yeah. Well, tell us what it is. They can't see the notes.
I know, it's your job. I was lobbing, like in basketball, where someone's like going to go for a shot, and then they like give like the alley-oop. That was yours, and you missed it.
Totally missed it.
Completely, just into the out of bounds.
Right.
Offsides.
Right. Yeah.
Forced error.
If you say so. So anyway, Gerald Undone released these new purple USB-C cables, which we're definitely here for. Because,
yeah, I'm into it.
I mean, Condor Blue has had those USB-C cables that have the fabric on them. They sell them in blue and black, I think, and now there's a purple one from Gerald.
Pretty sure there were pink ones from iJustine.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, they're just all kinds of colors for those cables now.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I assume they made one this long. 4 feet USB-C. 100 watt power delivery support.
USB 3.2 speeds.
Yeah.
That's the difference actually between the iJustine pink ones and the Gerald purple one.
More power.
Is that the pink ones are USB 3.1.
And
I don't know if they did the 100 watt PD. So this seems like a newer cable, but we like Gerald, so definitely here for this.
Yeah. No, I'm into it. It's always hard to find the right cable. Like, you never know if you grab a USB-C cable and it's like, is this one 2.0 or is this one 3.1? I was copying a bunch of files between drives this weekend, as I do, just some casual file management. And I was using like the short USB-C cables that came with my T7. And I assumed that those are 3.1, but some of that was happening really slowly. And I was like, did I accidentally grab a 2.0 cable? And like, there's no way to know.
Yeah.
But if you just buy the purple ones, then you'll know the purple ones are 3.2.
Well, that's what I do with I have one of the blue Condor Blue ones, and I just know anytime I grab that cable, that's a good cable.
Yeah.
I will say I want them to come out with some more lengths of this, and I want ones with right angle connectors.
Yeah.
So if you get the blue ones, you can get them in all different lengths. You can get right angle or straight or a combination. And like if you're building a camera rig or something, it's really nice to be able to get the right angle stuff. So.
I was really into the idea of a right angle cable, and then I use it to plug into my laptop because for some reason those Condor Blue cable connections seem to secure better to one of my drives specifically. Like I have one of those T7 shields, and all of my cables fall out except for the Condor Blue one. It's like the pins are better or something, or I don't know. There's something wrong with that drive. Regardless, like I have the right angle thing, and when I go to plug it in, I have to be careful like which way I orient it, because I have in some cases accidentally covered up like my charging port or my SD card slot.
I've had that happen.
And I was like, oh shoot, I need to get to that slot, but I'm copying like 40 gigs and I can't like unplug this, and I'll have to wait like 2 minutes. That's horrible.
That's one problem, and I also feel like you have to be more careful unplugging the right angle.
Yeah.
Because if you want to grab it like where the connector is.
Right.
Because if you grab it off a little bit, then like you're putting leverage on the port, and so I don't know. I tend to put the right angle on the other side.
Did they say how much these things cost?
The cable?
Yeah.
It was like $23.
Well, that seems pretty good.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty reasonable for what it is. So
all right. Okay.
Good to see.
Okay.
But we should actually talk about some camera gear today, because
yeah.
there's so much camera gear. We're not even going to get to all of it.
No,
I mean, like
no.
Canon announced RF cinema primes today.
What?
It's like not even on our radar because there's so much camera gear to talk about.
Okay, yeah.
So that's on the list, but it's at the bottom of the list. That's probably not going to happen today.
Yeah, no, that's going to push. I really, really, really want to talk about the Sony Burano, but that's going to push. I don't know. Let's talk about what to me is the most important release today.
I can't imagine what that would be. I've got no guesses. What could it possibly be, Lucas?
Okay, so first of all, I know that you're going to be really tempted to call this the Fujifilm GFX100 Mark II.
I am, and that's exactly what I'm
From
call
what
it.
I understand from all of the Fuji briefings that I had, which was 0, that this is supposed to be called the second, as in...
It's very pretentious.
It's really bad. It's like, yeah, so this is the GFX100 the second. We're just going to call it the second for short.
Did they say that second part?
I'm sure that someone said it. I've heard it from like multiple people. They're like, oh yeah, and then the second's like this and the first was like this. I'm like, guys, I know this camera costs $7,500, but that is like one step too bougie.
Yeah, it kind of is. So before we talk about the camera itself,
The second.
the second, yes. Did you watch the event?
Dude, I tried to watch some of the event and it's like it's so artsy.
Can you tell me what it was like though? Because I haven't gotten to see the event. So.
Well, some of it was in German, some of it was in Japanese, and some of it was in English.
Okay.
Which cool. There was a lot of focus on like we're doing it at this art house, and so it was kind of like this whole thing.
I think it was in Sweden, right?
It sure was.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if any of this was in Swedish. It felt like any parts of it where they were like, this is kind of the big takeaways. We're gonna do that in English, and here's the really nerdy tech stuff. We're gonna do that in Japanese, because people don't really care.
Interesting.
Yep.
This is like a weird bilingual presentation.
I was like, I don't have time to read this. I need someone to tell it to me. Anyways, it was a classic Fuji event. It was very hard to watch.
How much 80s techno music was there?
Not enough. Not nearly enough.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I guess they saved that for the X series.
Right. Yeah,
the
of course.
GFX.
They didn't mention X series at all.
Which is kind of surprising. Disappointing, maybe a better word. I guess it's not surprising, but I was hoping to hear something.
It was the GFX event, right? It's like, this is, GFX medium format.
They could have thrown us a bone. I mean, just a little bit.
I do feel like they're in this weird spot where they say, we have this APS-C line over here. We don't need full frame because like we can get those high megapixels. The sensors have really clean performance. We compete super well in dynamic range with video, and like X-Trans is better for moire and blah, 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 and microconscious, this, that, and the other, and smaller and more compact, and we can like design a better portable camera system in APS-C.
Yep.
And then they turn around and they say the GFX, because it's medium format, is better than full frame in every way. And now we're introducing speed to it, so now it's even faster than it was before. And now it really competes, and the images are so clean and it's so high resolution, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you're kind of making the argument for full frame against your APS-C line as you're making the argument for medium format over GFX.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, over, full frame.
Yep. Because it's like they're saying bigger isn't better, but then they're like, but sometimes bigger's better.
That's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, I don't know. I like what they do, though. I think that their line makes sense, and I think it's kind of cool and unique that instead of having APS-C and full frame like most of the other manufacturers, they just say like, well, we're not going to have full frame, but we're going to have APS-C and GFX. And
yeah, definitely.
At least up until this release, it has very much seemed like there are major trade-offs you make between those systems. And I'm not saying there aren't. There still are now. I think there's a few blurrier lines that we'll talk about today. But, I mean, it's like, I think that the line between their X series and the GFX series is a whole lot more defined than the line between, like, Sony's APS-C cameras and their full-frame cameras, as an example.
I really appreciate that Fuji has committed to their APS-C line. They didn't, like, hit the brakes and switch to full-frame.
Well, and it's also not like... It's not a budget. Like, it's not like these are the entry-level cameras.
Right. Like, they made a decision. They stuck to it. But do you feel like they kind of put themselves into a corner with APS-C? Do you think that they actually wanted, like, they were one of the first ones to this market, maybe, 2010-ish, 2011. I guess not, for whatever. Everyone, like, there wasn't a lot of full-frame cameras back then. Do you feel like they, like, pushed real hard to get this stuff out, and then, everyone else started going full-frame, and do you think they wish they did at that time?
That's a good question. I personally think what they're doing makes sense, and I think that it's smart of them to be different, because I think if they were trying to compete against Sony and Canon and all the other brands in that full frame battleground.
Sure.
I think that would be a real uphill battle. Whereas now, like, I think Fuji has several advantages, but I think one of their big advantages is that their cameras are smaller, lighter, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe they do regret it. I mean, I'm sure there's some limitations that places on them, but I also think it differentiates them in a way that's probably made them successful.
Yeah, I think that it causes them to make some of the best APS-C cameras out there, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And okay, so like,
why are we talking so much about APS-C though?
Back to the GFX.
Yes.
Oh, like all this whole, bigger, better, blah, blah, blah. One of the pieces of all that rhetoric of like, why go full medium format, the thing that concerns me the most is they announced Reela, a new film simulation. Which
I told you it was going to happen. We heard that rumor recently.
Yeah, we did. I'm super pumped about it. I'm like, this is great. More film simulations, more better.
Yeah, except
they said when they were talking about it in the thing of like, okay, what's made it possible for us to make this film simulation and the colors and whatever is because like this, whenever we made Reela, whatever, it was try to make film look like digital, and so it had to be very clean. And here's like how the silver base, blah blah blah, and the random look of it, you're able to like do that in film, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they basically implied that they need that 102 megapixel super high resolution sensor in order to get it to emulate like the grain and cleanness, quote unquote, of that format, which to me said, you're never going to get to use this.
It sure does sound that way. And you don't know whether that's just like a marketing pitch of like, we've got this camera and look what it enables, or if that really means that it's never going to come to those other cameras, but it sure sounds like it's never going to come to the XH2S.
Yeah, it's never going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And like, I'm sure they'll come up with some BS reason for why they can bring it to the next one, but still.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because, I mean, the GFX100 II has the same X processor 5 that's in the XH2S, and it also just feels like that's crossing a Rubicon where it's like they put features in the new camera that they're not bringing back, and it's hard to imagine that there would be another feature they'd have in the new one that they then bring back. Like, I don't know. It feels like the code bases have diverged. And
we are obviously making assumptions.
Sure.
There used to be the whole Kaizen thing, and we're going to bring the newest stuff to the oldest thing. So like, we don't know. Maybe they're going to bring it all back to the XH2S, which is really what I mostly care about. Anyway, let's talk about this GFX thing because this camera is crazy.
Yep. So it is. I mean, this is what the rumor was, right? Like, the rumor was that it was going to be a new version of the GFX100. Yep. That's what it is. Yep. And I think the specs were mostly on point, but I mean, there's clearly some nuance here that wasn't in the rumors.
Right. So basically accurate, brand new 102 megapixel bare sensor. It is not stacked. It is backside illuminated, but they're pairing it with the new X-Trans 5 processor. So they're getting really good read speeds. And so you can do things like a blistering 8 frame per second photo,
which is apparently fast, I guess.
For medium format, that is pretty stinking fast. I mean, we're coming from like 1 or 2 maybe on the previous version.
I did see a comparison too of to I guess like the Hasselblad X2D.
Sure.
And the burst rate on the GFX is significantly faster than that. I think that one had a burst rate of like 5 or something.
Right.
So
it's
good.
It's a pretty big deal. They were even like, and now this is a sports camera. And I was like, guys,
let's not get carried away.
just hold on, okay?
Yeah.
This is no Z9. Just stop it.
Yep.
Anyway, but it is significant though. It does feel like they kind of got over the hump with this one, where the rolling shutter is now not too bad, and they can say, hey, look, here's real deal video specs. The read speed is much better. The IBIS is better. And so now, things that you couldn't really do before with medium format, where like you go back 5 years, medium format meant tripod, because at 102 megapixels, the smallest little bit of handshake is you're going to see it. You're going to see the blur. You're shooting at such high resolutions. And so, the IBIS in the 100, the first, made it possible to do some handheld stuff. And now this kind of just takes it one step further. Now you have even better read speeds. You have a better IBIS. And so like you can do more things along the lines of what you would do with a full frame, but in medium format. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of what I was getting at when I was saying that it feels like it you know, it feels like it blurs the lines a little bit because you do kind of, they've gotten past some of those limitations and some of those things where it's like, well, you would never pick a medium format for this. Like they've kind of moved past some of that stuff, which is cool to see.
Yeah, it seems like they chipped away a lot at what you would pick full frame for over medium format. And they really packed this thing in. One, it's shipping at $7,500.
Yeah, which is a huge, because the previous one was $10,000.
Right, it was. And so that's pretty stinking good.
I mean, it's a major discount.
It's a really expensive camera, but they put everything in this camera. I mean, it's got like an RJ45 port on it for LAN connection for your camera to cloud. Like full. We're not going into it.
Favorite feature.
Yeah. That's anyways. I mean, like a full size HDMI, like USB-C, line in, line out, whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Right. Plus a battery grip that's removable. You can take the eyepiece off.
Yeah. Did they have that on the previous one?
Yeah, the EVF, the EVF was removable.
Yeah, so they have that now too, and they also have like a tilting adapter you can get, which is pretty neat.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
I saw somebody suggested that they need to make an accessory so that you can just mount the EVF off to the side so that you can rig this thing out like a cinema camera. I'm into that.
Man, you know, I want to joke about that, but at the same time, they're kind of pushing this camera as being good for some video stuff. So like they probably have that in their head somewhere.
Okay, they had a whole segment where they brought in some people and they're like, let's talk about the cinematography and all this stuff. And they're talking about how great it is and how you have all these different options. And like you can shoot with, you know, whatever glass you want because it's medium format, but it can crop down to full frame, it can crop down to Super 35.
And they have a PL adapter for it.
Yeah, and they have a PL adapter. And so they're like, this is for shooting large format video if you want it. And like here it is rigged out with a Cook lens and, you know, it's got V-mount batteries on the back and all this sort of thing. And I'm like, that's a pretty cool looking rig. How'd you solve the stupid dummy battery problem? Does it support ASUS now? Yeah. Where's my F-Log 2 conversion? I'm like, these people are talking about, oh, like you get so much dynamic range and the footage is so good to work with, which like F-Log 2 off the XH2S, I love those files because there is tons of latitude and like they look so clean. They're very, very good. But whenever you're workflowing with it, you have to use the LUT to get to Rec 709, or you have to like fake the transform because it's not like there's no NLEs that support F-Log 2 and it's like 2 years on.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, guys, I get it. But also like, did you fix all these stupid little basic problems that we've been having for the last year?
I mean, it's kind of goofy to compare it to a cinema camera. Because I mean, it doesn't have time code. It doesn't have XLR audio in. Like it, you know, it's missing a lot of big features that cinema cameras would have. And I mean, the problem that it has for video purposes is that it's $7,500 and you can buy some good cinema cameras for that price.
Daniel, do you want me to list for you all of the cinema cameras that have a larger sensor than this camera?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, there's the Arri 65.
I should have put in like a 10-minute silence here. I get that, but I don't know. And what I wanted to say though is that, I mean, it's missing the mark on that in some ways, but then they added some video features to this camera that really frustrate me because the XH2S, which is legitimately a good video camera in its class, is missing these features.
I'm so mad.
And it's like, why did they put these on this camera that's really not made for this purpose, but they don't have them on the XH2S? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. It's like, here's our super duper flagship camera. And I think they like really wanted to push, you know, this can do video.
I think shoot 8K video, right?
Yeah. I mean, okay. The modes and everything that this thing can shoot are as confusing as a cinema camera. And I think they did that on purpose.
It's a pro feature.
Because you have 102 megapixels and you have like a 44 by 33 millimeter sensor, however big this thing is. I think that's about right. It's like, it's, you know, okay, are you going to shoot, you can shoot in like 17 by 9, or you can shoot in like 2.35 to 1. Like, I guess that's the anamorphic D-squeeze, or maybe you can even just shoot that wide in like, I think you can shoot like 5.9K or something in 2.35 to 1.
Okay.
Like, but as a crop off this, and like they have all these different like format modes.
Yeah.
And depending upon which format mode you want to shoot in, combined with which resolution you want, changes the crop factor and like all of these sort of things. And so like, I want to come in here and say, guys, this thing can shoot 8K 30 full res readout, whatever, older sample, then it's like the bomb to bomb. I have no idea. I can't interpret any of this stuff.
Even if we could, it's not something that we could describe in a few sentences. It's like they have that little tool on their, they have the product page for the camera, and it has a tool on it where you can say, like, I want to use this type of lens, and it'll show you all the different crop factors for each one. But it's super confusing. Yeah. Like, why? I mean, I guess I know why they did it. I mean, it's very flexible, but it's just hard to understand.
And that's what they're selling on this for video is like, this thing is super, super flexible. Do you have a lens coverage you want to shoot? Do you have a format you want to shoot? This thing can probably do it as long as it's not more than 60 frames per second. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, you can shoot 8K. Yeah, you can shoot anamorphic, and it will de-squeeze in camera all the way up to 2 times. And like it can support, here's these PL mount lenses, and here's our super fancy whatever pair of something lenses. What are those things called?
Premista.
Premista. Those things are expensive. They're like $30,000 lenses. Anyway, I don't know. It's cool, but it's very Fuji. Like if you go look at the menu on any Fuji camera for video, it's like pick your resolution, pick your frame rate, pick your size, pick your like data rate, pick your frame rate. And it's like
too many options. Honestly,
there's so many options, man. And it's just like, here's one more table of options that you have to contend with.
That's exhausting.
I don't think anyone's ever going to be able to understand exactly what this thing can do.
But it's funny because they've got some really good video features on here, software features, and that's kind of what's frustrating as an XH2S shooter. So I mean, you've got waveforms, vector scope, RGB parade, histograms. It can record ProRes either internally or to an SSD, which why can't I do that on my XH2S?
Man,
so
external SSD recording is something that needs to come to every camera, and the fact that they dropped it on this one, I'm like, come on, guys, you got to bring it down the line.
Yeah. They've got that one on this one, and the next camera we're going to talk about, and I'm just like, why is it on these and not on the XH2S?
Yeah, and they're adding like the touch to track, autofocus to video, that sort of thing. There's just all these really cool, nice to have video features, like the anamorphic de-squeeze, that it's like, come on, please bring it down the line. And I don't know if they will.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they will. Like, that's kind of what I was hoping, that we'd get, some little hint that
that maybe like, and watch out for this next announcement or something, and just nothing like that. So I don't know. This camera does seem pretty stinking cool, and I think the video features are really neat to see something that's $7,500 that can shoot large format video.
I was trying to think, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, what's the scenario where you buy this for video?
I think that you're in a situation where you accidentally bought a full set of those new Cook spherical lenses for $21,000.
I can picture
and
this.
They're just sitting around. And you're like, man, I sure wish I had a $7,500 Fuji camera to put these things on, because that would look delicious.
I don't know about that.
Okay, that's not really. I think that it's a nice to have if you're already planning on shooting GFX and you need, a video camera. I can't imagine somebody going straight to this.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, if you need like a dedicated video camera and your budget is $7,500, like, there's a lot of really good options out there. We talked about some used cameras. I mean, you can get into like a Cine Alta F55 for less than that. You can get into a Red Komodo, either the new X or the old one.
Yeah. C70 you can find used for around $5,000. I mean, you got a lot of options in that price range.
There are a number of like older Red cameras. Maybe one that can shoot like 8K on the Monster or something. Like if you go back like 4 years or 3 years, you can probably find something in this price point, because those things were about $20,000 or less new. So like there's just like lots and lots of options. What'd you say was like the C300 is probably around this price point?
The
that one might be more.
Probably more. The 200 would be in this price point.
Yeah. So like there's if you're video, it's like, man, there's a lot of really good options. I think that where this appeals is that it is large format.
What if you're shooting on an Area 65 and you need a crash cam?
That's exactly what I was about to say. It's like, if you are shooting large format and you want to be able to shoot wide and get that interesting wide look, or you're looking for that long, the large format type compression in your video, it can be weird to mix, large format with, what do they call 35? Is 35 millimeter is still technically large format in video. Do you call it medium format? we'll just say full frame, which is
Sure.
Super 35.
Yep.
The real full frame.
Yeah.
Like if you mix those together, there's a distinct look difference, honestly. And so I mean, it's kind of nice. You know, here's this cheap option. You can slap your Cook PLs on there, and you know, run it into a building.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I don't know. I think there is a use case for somebody that mostly shoots on GFX, but then they want to make a YouTube video, and cool, like they've got this super expensive camera that has the latest processor. Like we might as well make that work for video so they can do that. But maybe I'm just being hopeful, but I'm kind of hoping that Fuji used this camera as a way to like prototype or build out some of those features. And I mean, those are just software things. Like I really am hoping that they'll take things like waveform, vector scope, things like that, and bring them back to other stuff in the X series line. Like XH2S, XH2, XT5, like they all have the same processor. There's no reason they couldn't bring those features back. And so maybe this is just the first one that they did that on. And, you know, it's like, this is the new exciting camera. We're going to put the features here first. But I don't know. I'm holding out hope that they'll add some of that stuff to the older cameras.
Yeah, me too. I do think it's funny that it's like, okay, you're a photographer. Here's the top of the top of the top line. Oh, you're into video? Here's something you can put on a drone and crash it and not worry about the cost.
Yeah, that is funny how that works.
Yeah, anyways.
Different prices, I guess.
I'm looking on DP Review at this list of rolling shutters and different video modes. And I know that this is a photo camera. We need to stop talking about the video. But like, I feel like it's a pretty big deal that the GFX can now shoot legit video. And it seems like, depending upon what you're shooting, and so like in the GF mode, which I guess is like the full sensor, it can do a rolling shutter of, like if you're doing like a 4K, like 15 milliseconds, which I think is better.
That's not bad.
I think that's better than an A7 IV.
Yeah.
So like that's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, you know, 5.6 seconds off the XH2S.
Yeah.
But like that's what you get for shooting APS-C.
It's like it's respectable.
It is respectable. If you're shooting 5.4K on the Premista size, that's a 28.1 milliseconds, which is
it's getting up there.
Yeah, it's like acceptable. But there's nothing on here as far as like how wide of the sensor are you shooting on that is more than, oh no, wait, here it is. I was gonna say more than 30 seconds, but if you shoot 8K, that's 31 milliseconds.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but even still, like getting over 30, that's like, maybe don't shoot 8K on this. I probably wouldn't suggest it, but unless it's like a pretty slow moving shot.
If you're shooting like an interview,
all right,
I could see it for that.
Yeah. I guess that would be fine. Anyway, like this, it's like legitimately good, and like that read speed does feed into the photo thing as far as making this thing more usable, which is why they were saying, hey man, you can shoot this now for sports and for wildlife, which I don't know. Both of those sound like you need reach. And if there's something that a medium format doesn't have, it's a reach.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but portraits and products and stuff like that, which is where medium format excels, this is just going to be even better.
Yeah.
And it's going to make it a lot easier. And the fact that I know that we're complaining about it, but the fact they have camera to cloud on this makes it...
It probably makes a lot of sense for a photo workflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people who shoot with like the... that phase 1 camera, I mean, they were primarily shooting it through, you know, a computer or whatever. Here's a stationary camera that we're processing these giant 150 megapixel images through.
Yep.
And so having a GFX now that you can just either wirelessly or, because they can't do wireless, like you can plug that into.
It's both.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi or Ethernet.
I mean, I think that's great. Like I hear now you have a studio camera or whatever that can feed photos directly into the workflow.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a really well-designed camera and a good photo camera. I can't remember if you mentioned the button layout.
Yeah, I was going to complain about that too, because they're like, look at the ergonomics of this thing. We really thought about this. We really thought through how people use the camera. The screen on top is tilted 15 degrees back towards you.
I thought that was cool. I think it's neat that the top plate is tilted back. That's a smart idea.
It is cool. And then they were also saying things like, oh, and the 3 buttons on the top of it, we put them in a line behind the shutter button, not
like
a line
horizontally.
Horizontally, not like front to back, but kind of along the bend of your finger because that's easier for you to reach. And I was like, if you knew that, why did you put them the other way on the XH2S where you can't reach back with your stupid index finger to press like 2 of the buttons? Because it's like, what are we doing? Come on, guys.
Yeah, it's like they knew this whole time how to make a good ergonomic camera.
Yeah. This thing looks fantastic. I mean, it's huge. Yeah. But it feels like they really thought through it. They put 2 buttons on the front where your fingers will go instead. I mean, like, come on. Why What are you doing, guy? Like, is your X team not talking to your GFX team?
It sure seems like it, doesn't it?
It does. It really, really does. Anyways, so I was mad about that because this camera looks amazing.
I mean, basically, we're mad that this camera's so good. That's honestly everything we've been saying. We're mad that this is as good
100%. As a Fuji shooter, I'm mad this camera is so good, and I need all of these things on my XH2S.
Yeah, maybe if you had paid 3 times as much for your XH2S, you would have gotten this stuff.
Valid point.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I will see. I hope some of it comes to the XH2S. I am excited about the camera in terms of what it is. I think it's super cool that they've reduced the price by as much as they have.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are a lot of photo shooters that are going to be really happy about this.
Yeah. I think the GFX series doesn't have a ton of lenses. They did release a new lens mode roadmap
I saw that.
for the GFX, which they didn't do in May for the X Summit.
Yep.
Which I'm just going to keep complaining about because what are we doing here? But they did announce that they are going to have a 500mm f5.6 prime come out for GFX.
I can't imagine how heavy that thing's going to be.
Oh, dude,
that's where you're using it for sports, though. 500mm lens.
Enormous. How big is that in full frame numbers?
I can't remember what the crop factor is.
It's basically 0.71.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty stinking huge. That's like a 350mm lens, which is still
that's substantial.
It's long, but it's like I've seen longer. I don't know.
That's another podcast, Lucas.
That's a different. Yeah. Okay. F4 basically.
Yeah.
Which I mean, you go look at full frame. Those are all basically 5.6 at similar focal lengths. This is going to be very fast, very shallow. And shooting at 102 megapixels, it's going to be extremely clean.
Yeah.
And highly resolving. So, and that's kind of the advantage of shooting medium format is like you can get these brighter lenses in, longer lengths and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So I think that's really cool to see. They're also going to be coming out with a power zoom for the GFX in 2025, for all those video features.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see what happens with the video features. If maybe we're missing something, maybe people do want to use it to shoot video. It just seems strange to me.
I think people do. And I think it's a really cool ad and it really sells the camera. And I think it also helps people. And if you, at least for me, like if I'm looking at a camera and it has a really high like read speed for video, then I know that it's going to be able to do that for photo too.
Sure.
So
yeah, I guess that's true. It does kind of it shows off the capabilities in
of the processor and the sensor basically.
Yeah,
I know it's cool.
It is cool.
I am not going to get the Deuce.
Yeah, same here.
But I think it's great. This is the top of the top of the top end for Fuji. And it goes without saying, this is a contender for Camera of the Year 2023, in my opinion.
As are all cameras.
Sure, I mean, all cameras are. I mean, if I had to make like my top list right now, I mean, we're talking. There's probably the S5 Mark II X is up there.
Yeah,
I would say maybe the R8 is probably on that list somewhere. Though I think that it has enough detractors that it probably isn't going to be at the top.
I'm really looking forward to having this discussion later in the year. I think especially since we've been doing this show all year, we're going to have a lot of, we've looked at these cameras in depth. There's a lot to think about there.
Yep. Plus there's a lot of camera news to get through before the end of the year.
Yeah. That's
Speaking of.
Yeah. Should we talk about the other contender for Camera of the Year 2023?
No comment.
Just you wait.
This is not on my list.
Just you wait.
No, hard pass.
So we're recording this. I guess you want to imagine that when you hear a podcast, it's like hot off the presses. But we're a couple weeks out, and so we mentioned already that like this Fuji GFX event just happened today, and today it was a big day for news in general. But one of the big things that happened was that Apple had their fall event where they announced the new iPhones, as we have come to expect every September.
Yep.
And so today for us, 2 weeks ago for you, they announced the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Pro. And I think that the iPhone camera has to be one of the most used cameras. And so, I mean, it's like, how can we not talk about that?
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree, right? Cell phones have basically replaced most people's point and shoots, which now we have all realized is a sin. And so we're all looking to buy X100 Vs, and now there's not enough of them to go around.
That's right.
So, and that's what everyone's trying to buy Ricoh GR cameras. And now those are sold out. And it's like, what can you do?
Buy an iPhone. That's the answer.
No, Daniel. The answer is buy a Pixie handmade French camera.
I don't know if that's equivalent. I really don't.
I do. I'll tell you definitively. That's the answer.
Agree to disagree.
Okay, fine.
So the iPhones.
Yeah, so the 15s basically have last year's camera, essentially. A 48 megapixel quad bay or whatever.
It's not literally last year's camera. They did improve it.
Okay.
I think the Pro cameras are the interesting part of this discussion.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So we have the 15 Pro, which has 2 cameras on it. It has an ultra wide, and it has like a telephoto, standard telephoto, which is like what, like 28 millimeters.
So
roughly?
the regular 15 and the 15 Plus have 2 cameras.
Right.
The 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max have 3 cameras.
Oh, that's right. It does have 3 cameras. It's just the difference between the Pro and the Pro Max is the telephoto.
That's right. Yeah.
One's a 3x and one's a 5x.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Which that 5x, everyone was thinking was going to be a periscope camera. And it seemed like the way they described it, it's like this stacked prism thing, which did not read to me like a periscope.
I think it is a periscope camera, but it's just implemented differently than what most of them have been. Because a lot of periscope cameras on other smartphones have like popped out of the top or something. And
no, they're just like mounted sideways kind of thing. And it's like the sensor's over here and it kind of hits a prism, goes sideways and hits another prism.
That's how this one works too.
It seems like it's like, anyways, whatever.
Yeah, who knows? It's hard to tell with them because when Apple does these announcements, they always come up with their own buzzwords for things.
Yeah, they do.
And so you can't really go by that. So it has some sort of prism thing with mirrors. It sounded like a periscope to me, but who really knows?
Yeah.
So that's only on the Pro Max
because
because they said they needed more space for that system.
I buy it.
And the sensor on that one also has a more the sensor for that telephoto lens on the Pro Max has a like more sophisticated IBIS system,
right?
Which makes sense because like at a longer focal length you would need that.
Yeah, it sounded like they added another axis or something. It wasn't totally clear because of Apple speak.
Yeah, yeah. And that telephoto, the 5X, is an equivalent 120 millimeter.
Right. So yeah. So I think like some of the big interesting things coming out of these cameras. First, it looks like they're adding a different coating on the lens, which if you've been paying attention to my legendary lens series and all the talk about vintage lenses, is that in the 70s, coatings were the big deal. It was like, let's release this thing with a different coating. Like this one has this coating, this one has that coating, because the coatings on the end of the lenses really matter as far as like what does the ghosting look like, how is it, how it can impact like aberrations and spotting and all this kind of thing. And if you've ever shot on like a modern iPhone, you'll know if you shoot photo or video at night, you get so many freaking little spots all over the place.
Yep.
And it's like, they're like, oh, the sensor's bigger, but now you're getting like really bad ghosting. And I just, fingers crossed that these new coatings, they finally figured out something that our forefathers tried to teach us, which is coatings matter. And maybe we're going to have less ghosting.
Well, and when I was watching the discussion on this on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, on Twitter, that's what people were talking about. Like as soon as they said coatings, everybody's like, is it going to take better pictures at night? So we'll see.
Oh my gosh. I really hope so, because that's been a pretty big problem. And coatings are the right answer for that, or a screw-on lens hood.
Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of not reasonable. So I guess to cover kind of the other main features of it, the main camera, I'm talking about the Pro and the Pro Max. The main camera is a 48 megapixel quad Bayer configuration. But one thing that they've done is now you can actually shoot a 48 megapixel photo with it.
Right. Previously, you could pull a 48 megapixel photo, but you had to shoot in RAW.
Yeah.
And now you can do it in HEIF.
Yes. And by the way, just as a side note, everybody seemed shocked that Apple said HEIF. And it seems like a lot of people on the internet do not say HEIF, and they just say HIEF. Or, HEIF.
Oh.
And this was shocking to me because I feel like you and I have said HEIF many times. And people are like, HEIF, what a ridiculous word. I'm like, I don't know.
Where have they been?
I don't not on this camera podcast, I guess.
I don't know. Maybe they're not photo people.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's a big win, being able to shoot 48 megapixels and just have that as like a normal photo and not shooting raw.
Do we need to get into the weeds on what quad bear is again?
I don't know.
Like,
let's get into the weeds. That's what we do here.
Yeah, because I was listening to this other podcast and they were kind of waxing on and on about the iPhone cameras and like whether or not you should like take a picture and then crop it to what you want or zoom in digitally and then take the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And like we talk about video and oversampling and all this sort of thing. And it's like if you have a 48 megapixel sensor and you're going to take a 12 megapixel photo on it, you have the ability to oversample down to 12 megs. Like that's what they're doing sort of. And it's like you can't oversample down. And so like if you zoom in digitally with the 48 megapixels, you could zoom in to a 12 megapixel actual count of those pixels and get a 12 megapixel photo. But if you do something in between and it results in a 12 megapixel, it's like it's oversampling of that larger area down to it almost. But I've never been 100% clear on if that's what Apple's doing.
Yeah.
Because like the way that a quad bear works, like normally a bear is like a certain pixel array of, you know, red, green, blue. And what the quad bear does is it takes a pixel array and it's like each red pixel is 4 pixels.
Yeah.
Each blue pixel is 4 pixels. So it's not an actual like a 48 megapixel bear sensor. It's just a 12 megapixel sensor where all the subpixels are now 4 pixels.
Right.
Which does change the demosaicing process and how it handles moire and that sort of thing.
It's honestly, with Apple specifically, and really with any smartphone, but I think Apple is kind of at the top of the game here. It's really hard to tell because they do so much computational stuff.
Right.
And, you know, whereas like, I mean, every camera now does some sort of computational thing. Like we just talked about how Fuji has the X Processor 5. And I mean, every camera brand has a processor that's taking raw data off the sensor, doing something to it before you get a photo or video.
Sure.
But I mean, smartphones have a lot to make up for because of how optically small, you know, the cameras and sensors are. And I mean, Apple does tons of computational stuff and it makes a huge difference. Like, that's why you can take like a Google Pixel or an Apple iPhone, take a picture at night, and it looks like way better than what you can get from a normal camera because like the computational stuff is doing a lot. So I think that makes it really hard to answer this question because like how like it has all this data and it's doing something to it, but I don't think it's as simple as saying it's like binning it or something. It's doing a lot more than that.
Well, I think that these new cameras kind of shed a little more light on it. And kind of what I'm getting to is, you know, on the previous cameras, it was pretty obvious that, you know, if you shot the punched in 2x telephoto option, which there was a 3x and has 1x camera and says like, here's the 2x. It's like what they were doing is they took the sub-pixel layout of like all the 48 pixels and then they just cropped a 12 megapixel image out of the sensor.
Yeah.
But it's not really cropped because it is literally 12 megapixels. And so you are getting a full 12 megapixel file. And it's just whenever you shot at 48, it was taking, you know, here's this 4 pixel quadrant and that one's also 12 megapixels, but it's using bigger pixels. The new cameras, or what was unclear is if you were somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Were they oversampling down to, or were they taking a 12 megapixel quad bear and then cropping in? And so like we didn't know what they were doing. And with the new cameras here, you can shoot in a 24 megapixel like high resolution photo rather than a 12, but it's a 48 megapixel sensor.
Right.
And so that to me clearly reads as like we're taking all 48 pixels and we are going to compress that down into a better looking 24 megapixel
That's a
photo.
good point.
And so to me, it kind of answers the question of the other one of like, yeah, do use the digital zoom on these 48 sensors because you are probably going to get a better image than if you cropped it in post.
Yeah. Which I think is interesting because that's not, and I mean, I have an older iPhone that doesn't have a 48 megapixel sensor. So I think what I'm about to say is still true for me, but I've always kind of thought with smartphones, you know, just take the picture with any camera, really. Just take the picture with whatever optical zoom you can get and then crop and post because, you know, how good could it be? But that doesn't quite hold true with sensors like this.
Right. And it's a lot of it is so opaque that it's hard to know what to do. Because I know that Google released a feature on their Pixel phones with this like super zoom thing. And if you digitally zoomed in, they would use their machine learning and AI and all this stuff and like all of their multiple picture combining to make a better looking zoomed in picture
Yeah.
than if you took it wide and cropped in. And so like it encouraged you to like, yeah, just digitally zoom because the computationally can make a better photo.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting.
I've never heard Apple actually say that they do that on the stage, but I would be shocked if they didn't.
Me too. Yeah. And something that kind of goes along with this, another feature that they added on the new ones that I thought was kind of cool is the main camera. You actually can pick focal lengths. So you can pick between 24, 28, and 35 equivalents.
Yeah, I think that's great. And like the ultra wide is what, like 12 or 13 millimeter
Yeah, something
roughly?
like that. Mhm.
Yeah, so like you get that one, but then on the mains camera, because of that 48 quad bar sensor, you can shoot in these different focal lengths and probably get equivalently good images out of all of them.
And that's what I was going to say is I don't think they would have added that as because that is like a full-on first-class feature. Like there's a button in the camera app that lets you specifically pick those focal lengths. And I don't think they would have done that if you were getting worse quality, because for Apple, people sharing all these iPhone photos is marketing for them.
Yep.
You know, you want somebody to see a photo, be impressed, be like, what'd you shoot that with? Oh, an iPhone. Like that's good marketing for Apple. I don't think they would have put this feature in if they felt like the image you were getting at 35 millimeters equivalent was worse than what you would get at 24 or whatever.
Right, exactly. Do we know what the true length of that, like what's the 1X? Is that 24?
It has to be, right? It has to be the widest one.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because like they've slowly been working it back. Like it used to be 27 or something like that. And then I think in the most recent one, it was like 25 or 26 or something. So this is even wider than the 14 Pro, right?
I guess it might be. Yeah. That's interesting. So they put out this term, saying like, basically these cameras have 7 different focal lengths.
Sure.
Which is that's cool when you think about it, because the ultra wide camera can do a macro mode.
Right.
And then the 13, which is the normal ultra wide.
Right.
And then your main camera has those 3 focal lengths we just talked about. So that brings us up to 5. And then I guess, you've got your telephoto option, which is the 77 millimeter on the Pro and the 120 millimeter on the Pro Max.
Right.
And I'm not sure I guess the in-between is that you can do like a 2X mode.
Yeah, probably. Like you can do that 12 megapixel off of that main sensor cut, which is going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's a lot of flexibility that you get.
I think it's great. I think it's really cool. And, they're adding all of these different options for how you'll be able to frame your photos. And in the 14, they released those, or was it the 13? They released those different like color modes. And so you could pick how it's going to process, and you could kind of pick like, do I want it to be oversaturated like a Samsung photo, or do I want it to be hyper contrasty like a Pixel photo, or do I want it to blow out all parts of the picture and favor only the face and then make the face look really flat and stupid in HDR like an iPhone photo? And it's like you could kind of pick what you wanted and how you wanted it to look and like let it kind of steer the algorithm a little bit. And I've kind of been envious of that feature because I have a 12. And I was like, man, I wish I could tell it to not take stupid pictures. And I can't. It just takes stupid pictures.
Yeah.
So I feel like with more, like especially with the Pro cameras, they're adding more and more ability for you to have control over what you're shooting.
Yeah.
But like within the constraints of still being able to just whip out your phone and press a button.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Another aspect of that is the portrait, the automatic portrait stuff. So, for a long time, they've had the portrait feature, but I don't know, but do you ever use that?
No.
Yeah. So I don't either. I used it whenever I first got an iPhone that had it, and I was like, this is pretty cool. But the problem is when I'm taking a picture, I don't ever think about it.
Yeah. You don't have to like switch to that other mode and now shoot a portrait photo.
Yeah. And it's like, I forget that I have it. And also like, what if I just have my camera out and I'm taking pictures of things and then I happen to take a picture of a person? Like I'm not going to switch over.
Yeah.
And so they added the thing now where like it automatically, if it detects a person or an animal, it automatically saves that depth data so that you can go back later and make it a portrait photo, which really smart idea.
Yeah. To me, I'm like, why weren't we doing that from the beginning? And obviously it's because, computation and blah, blah, blah. I think this is a fantastic feature and I'm really happy to see them be doing that because now it's like, you can just go back and make that portrait photo if you want.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what I want. It's like I don't care if it uses a little bit more data. Like when I press that shutter button, just capture a bunch of stuff and let me make decisions later. Like I'll deal with the storage space. That's fine. I just want to capture as much as I can in that moment.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's good. And like they were showing pictures of, here's these portraits and here are these really fantastic photos that we've taken with the iPhone. I swear, when I was looking at those, like, they looked like iPhone photos still. Like if you look too close, like even still, some of like the skin tones and things kind of meshed together too much.
Yeah.
And like there was some over smoothing and this sort of thing. And I'm like, they're really good photos, but they still look like phone photos.
It kind of goes back to the, they're doing so much computationally to make up for the optical realities of what they're dealing with. And they've gotten really far, but I mean, that's why we have this podcast. Like, there's still a market for real cameras.
Right. One of the things that did impress me the most was they showed a picture of like this dark portrait that was very contrasty, where the person was side lit.
Yeah.
And the left side of her face was well lit and everything, and then it was a very dark shadow fall off. And for me, who like every time I take a picture with an iPhone, it's like, okay, the face is here. We're going to expose this perfectly. And we're going to bring up all the shadows so that it is the most even exposure across the entire face and there are no shadows. And then we're going to compromise everything else in the picture so that it looks horrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, you took that picture with an iPhone and it didn't do that? Sweet.
Yeah.
Please, more of this.
We'll see if that pans out. Hopefully that's hopefully that's not like using some kind of manual setting or something.
Yeah, they may have shot it in RAW or whatever and edited it to get to that look, but I would be like, I want my phone to stop trying to do me favors.
Yeah.
I want the contrasts and the contour of the lights. And like, that's why I'm taking this picture in this way. And like, if you like to do photography, I mean, those are the things that you're looking for. You're looking for how interesting the lights and the shadows cast, and you're making decisions based upon that. And whenever the camera on your phone is optimized for, like, I'd have to have an even HDR exposure for everything because I'm built for taking pictures at children's birthday parties. It's like in direct contrast with what you're trying to do for your fancy photo.
Well, and there are third-party apps that probably help with some of this, Halide and things like that. But it's like I want a switch in the camera app that simply is a switch between like artistic mode and documentation mode, because like I have a lot of pictures on my phone of, there's a label on this electronic device that's behind a desk. I know I can just shove my phone back there and hit the button and it'll take a usable picture of that.
Yep.
Like I bet you've done that too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like stuff like that. It's like, I don't care about it looking good. Like I want it to be lit, so I can see it.
Yeah.
I don't mean lit like the way the kids say it.
No, you mean it both.
Yeah, I do mean it both. You're right. But it's like, I want to be able to switch between that and a mode that does like let it be a dark picture or whatever. Like you said, kind of lets you, like, trusts you a little bit more to be making decisions. And
right.
I don't necessarily mean that I want to have like tons of settings in one mode or the other. Like it's a phone. I want it to be simple, but it would be nice if you could switch between those.
It sure would be. So, man, we have spent more time talking about the photo capabilities of this than I thought we would.
Same here.
Because the video features, Daniel, look pretty sweet.
I gotta tell you one more thing on the photo thing.
Okay.
I saw this and I think people have missed this so far, but so the three cameras on those Pro phones are always different. Like that they all have different specs.
Right.
And the ultra wide is usually like really bad compared to the others.
Sure.
But the telephoto is also not as good as the main camera.
Right.
And so what this means is that if you have a Pro Max that has that 5x periscope zoom, it has the main camera that still has the same 24, 28, 35 equivalent things. What that means is that if you want to take a telephoto shot at 3x with 77 millimeter equivalent, you'll get a better picture out of a Pro than out of a Pro Max, because the Pro is doing that with an optical thing,
right? Whereas
the Pro Max is having to crop in on the main sensor like to a pretty extreme degree to get that shot.
But I guess, but this still comes down to whether or not the telephoto lens in its full readout mode is competitive with the non-oversampled mode of the main sensor.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Yep.
My money's on the one that's optimized for that. Like, I've got a sensor with a 77 millimeter equivalent lens. My money is on that over anything else that's got a wider lens and cropping in and all this stuff. But I guess we'll see.
That is really interesting. Yeah. I mean, as a camera person, like I've I used an Android phone for 10 years before I bought my 12 Pro Max, which is like the first iPhone I've ever owned. And the reason I switched over was because of the video features. It was like, you know, we're shooting all this stuff, and I want something that I can integrate into my footage and have like decent video and that sort of thing. And so like, if I was going to buy one of these phones, like I would pick based upon the camera arrays and like which one I wanted, rather than like I need to have the biggest screen and that sort of thing.
I gotta say that's where I'm at right now. Like,
it's
like personally,
do you need the 77 millimeter or do you need the 120 millimeter?
Yeah. Why do I have to make that choice though? It's terrible. Anyway, maybe we can talk about that more in a moment. But let's talk about the video features.
Okay, so I watched the event, and then just as like a recap before this podcast, I watched the Verge's supercut that they did. They posted to YouTube. And the supercut cut out the part where they talked about ASUS. And I was like, guys, this is like the biggest feature. And you guys cut it out? Because clearly nobody cares except for me.
Yep.
When we talked...
I mean, most people watching that video had no idea what that was.
I knew exactly what it was. Whenever they were like, oh, and now you can, you know, this supports ASUS, I about fell out of my chair.
Well, I knew what it was because of this podcast, because there was an episode where you talked about ASUS.
Yeah, I was super duper pumped. You know what doesn't support ASUS and isn't a part of the Academy standard for the colors?
I do know.
Yeah. Fujifilm,
Yeah.
the GFX, the Deuce. Nope, no ASUS. XH2S? Not in it. Come on, guys. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
The iPhone even has it now.
I know. You know what the iPhone also has?
What?
The iPhone can record video externally to an SSD.
I about flipped a table. I was like, this is awesome.
I mean, that's
but also, dang it.
Yeah, it's a super cool feature. Like there are people out there that are thrilled about that because especially because before now, you know, the iPhones were on Lightning. Getting footage off of iPhones for like bigger, you know, productions, like these people that like shot movies on iPhones, like getting the footage off is a total nightmare because Lightning is like USB 2 speeds, super slow.
Yeah, like the previous one you could shoot raw video on it. Like you could, is it raw or is it just ProRes?
I think let's just say ProRes.
I think that's right. Yeah, so like you could shoot ProRes video, but now you have a terabyte of video, and like you have to run if you were doing an actual shoot.
15 phones. You're just rotating.
You'd have to run multiple phones in order because you can't get the footage off fast enough.
Yeah.
Like so, USB-C for this is incredible, but the fact you can record to an SSD directly within ProRes is amazing.
Amazing, and yes, that was my first thought, and my second thought was, so you're telling me this smartphone can record video external and my $2,500 video camera can't?
Like, that's correct.
Come on, Fuji. Come on,
guys. Anyways, point is, like, if you're mixing footage, like for I'm shooting all this stuff in log, which 15 Pro can now shoot log.
Yeah, also a great feature.
10 out of 10.
And
loving that.
You know, I don't remember who made the joke. Maybe you made the joke. Somebody made the joke that, you know, like, oh, is it like Apple log? You know, like what kind of goofy version of log is this going to be? And I mean, if I understand right, I don't think it really matters because if it supports ACEs, then that should mean that there's just like clearly color transform information for that log profile. And so like, it doesn't tell us what the dynamic range is going to be and stuff, but like it does tell us that there is going to be a reasonable way to convert from that log to like a normal color space.
Right. Yeah. So like we still need a lot more information, and they're going to have to provide it if you're shooting in log, because like if you're shooting in log, now we got to know what color space you're shooting in. Are they shooting in Rec 2020? Or are they shooting in like AP, like one of the, it's like APO and AP1, like one of the ASUS color gamuts? I mean, I don't know, right? So it's like, what logs are we shooting with? I would assume it's probably similar to ASUS, which is a pretty stinking huge gamma.
Yeah.
Gamut. Anyway, like, what's the gamma, blah, blah, blah. So, like, we're going to have to get that color space transfer information. But, like, if you're matching footage, like, we shoot log on a bunch of things, and, you know, being able to move everything into a common color space to then match it all, and then now you just have one transform at the end of your timeline that takes it out of ASUS or DaVinci wide gamut or whatever your common color space is into Rec 709, and, like, you put all your final looks on it. Like, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, you have log and you have ASUS support for footage out of an iPhone makes it legitimately usable for integrating into projects with quote unquote real cameras.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, these are big features. I remember when the GoPro 11 came out last year, that was the first GoPro that had log. And that kind of felt like now you could legitimately take GoPro footage, use it as part of a bigger production, and it's not going to be a pain. It's going to probably look right. And this feels a little bit like that moment for the iPhone for me, where like now you can shoot in ProRes up to 4K 60. You know, you can record externally, it supports ACES, you can shoot in log. It feels like they've really built out that pro feature set.
Yeah, it sure does. And you know, like I said, I bought my 12 Pro. I like switched over to iPhone just because it's so much better at video, at least at the time, than anything else was. Now, if you're shooting on Android, you can go get an Xperia V and shoot in like S Cinetone.
How remind me how expensive that one is?
Like $1,900. The camera's so freaking expensive, but pretty stinking cool. I don't know. I've been tempted by that, but like I don't want to spend $1,900 on a phone. I just won't do it. I'd rather buy like that 50 to 140 that I don't own yet. Anyways, my 12 Pro is good at video, and so there's a few things that I shot and we edited where I integrated 12 Pro Max footage into it, and it is a pain in the butt to color match iPhone footage into anything else, because like you don't really notice it whenever you're just like looking at the thing you shot, but iPhone footage is crazy saturated. Like it's worse than Lumix S5 Mark II standard color profile saturated. And it's just kind of a huge pain to try to color match it and like get your yellows and your reds exactly right. And I just hate dealing with it. And like for me, getting log and getting ACES, whoo boy, I'm like super, super tempted to upgrade my phone. I was like, I don't need a new phone until this one breaks. You know what? I'm just going to wait like 2 years. I'm going to go back to Android whenever I do because I'm so sick of iOS and like all these stupid things and I hate it for 10 reasons. This would keep me on iOS, honestly.
I'm really surprised to hear you say that.
Yeah, because I would suffer through it, but oh boy, man, this is great.
I mean, it's kind of got me wondering, like, you know, we shoot these interview things pretty often, and I would be real curious to try setting up that new iPhone as a third angle somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And then just see if we can match it to where to where it looks natural with everything else. Because I mean, it seems like all the tools are in place to do that.
I honestly love using my iPhone like one would use an action cam. Like I'm not like chucking it off something and mounting to the things, but I've put it like on the dash of my car. And I have some footage even on the 12 Pro Max where it's like you can see the hood of the truck just kind of like moving around and then the horizon is perfectly stable. It's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the 12. The 14, they made that stabilization even better, like GoPro good kind of thing.
Yep.
And so this
one's probably even better than that.
Yeah. So. And so it's like you have this really good stabilization and it's small. So you can like stick it on the ground and shoot a car driving over it or something. And I feel like I can get like weird and interesting shots of like, put this in a spot where I can't put my big camera.
Right.
And just, it's got such a wide field of view that I don't have to care if it's in focus because everything's in focus on a phone and just like, here, get this shot.
Yeah.
And it's fun and it's cool. And like, I love being able to like capture those and stick them into the projects that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And now this one's like, the footage is even more compatible with what you're doing.
Yeah. And you're going to be able to get it off in a reasonable amount of times. You got USB-C.
My gosh. I'm going to get, if I bought one of these, I would get one of those right angle Condor blue cables and I would get another T7 and I would just MagSafe it to the back of my iPhone and I would just have it drive on the back of my iPhone all the time. Be like, what are you doing? I'm like, just my video camera. Shut up. Why do you have a lens hood on your iPhone? The coatings aren't that good.
I was kind of thinking about getting one of the Moment cases because I was like, that just puts me one more purchase away from having an external lens.
The Moment cases are good, but please note, Peak Design announced their new cases also.
Hashtag
and as a Peak Design ambassador, I'm not a Peak. Anyways, you got to get these. Like you can get them in like yellow. They're really cool.
Getting off topic here, Lucas.
Sorry.
One other video feature that I think we have to mention is that the Pro phones can shoot spatial video, which is the like whatever video mode that you would need to view it on an Apple Vision Pro.
I feel like I called that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people called that.
Yeah.
Because they showed that thing when the Vision Pro came out. There was this one scene in the thing that just didn't really land. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about, where the guy's like recording videos of his kids playing with the Vision Pro on.
Yeah. I feel like it was like a birthday party or something. Oh my gosh,
it was horrible.
And he's like, let me experience this event through this fake screen because I am capturing this moment. And it's like, like it just didn't land. You know, everybody's like, that doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
And so this is actually, I think, really nice to see because now you can use one of these new Pro iPhones to record that same video. And then later you can experience it on an Apple Vision Pro, but in that moment, you're just another person with your phone filming something, which just feels a lot better than using an Apple Vision Pro to do it.
I'm dying to know like how that looks or how they're doing it, because it seems to me like they're using, I couldn't tell if they're using the telephoto or the wide.
It looked like it was, because I don't know which of the 3 cameras.
I guess it's ultra wide and telephoto.
I think they're using the ultra wide and the wide from what I saw of the picture.
That's what I would assume as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of those sensors looks better than the other.
Yeah, I'm curious how they're going to deal with that too.
If you're shooting like actual 3D, I mean, you're using matched lenses of the same focal length, and you got your mirror and all this sort of thing.
But Luke, is computational photography, man. It's the answer to all our problems.
But like, that's what I'm wondering, because this is the weird, like, it's such a weird implementation, because like, This is not how you do stereoscopic 3D. You don't use 2 different focal lengths with 2 different sensors. It's like I'm gonna roll up onto a set and be like, well, I got my GH6 and my S5 Mark II. Let's shoot some 3D. I'm gonna put a 42.5 on this one, and then I'm gonna put 120 millimeter on this one, and it's close enough.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I have to assume it. I mean, maybe it doesn't look as good as some sort of dedicated rig, but I have to assume it looks good enough or they wouldn't be doing it. So I don't know.
I bet it'll be totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, what witchcraft are you doing that you've sorted out that we haven't been able to sort out in the cinema world for the last 15 years?
That's a good question. I'm excited, assuming it works well. I am excited about this though, because it also means that somebody like you or me that doesn't, like, I don't know about you. I'm probably not going to be buying this Vision Pro anywhere close to release. It's something I could imagine myself having someday. And so like, it's cool that if I wanted to, I could film something on my phone now and then just like have that file for some day in the future when I get a Vision Pro, or if I get a chance to use someone that somebody else has, like maybe that'd be cool. Like, it's neat that it's kind of like bringing that to a wider group of people.
They didn't talk about it, but I'm surprised they didn't also tie that into the cinematic mode stuff, because wasn't it like the 13 that came out with, you can basically shoot portrait mode for video, where it will do like smart reframey things.
I think you're right, and they really didn't talk about that feature at all in this.
No, they didn't. And it's like, if you can shoot stereoscopically, that gives you even more depth information than just LiDAR.
Yeah.
And it seems like if you were doing that, you could potentially in post get even more interesting, like computational depth of field, if like that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Or like in DaVinci Resolve, you can do like the smart masking thing where it's like, this is in the foreground, this is in the background. If you're shooting like stereoscopic, then like, if it can give you more like actual depth information, then that can make masking even easier.
Sure.
So that you could potentially shoot a person on any background and not have to green screen it, and then be able to like cut them out in post, which could make interesting, like, here's a welcome video or something where you need to like cut the person out.
Sure.
They didn't talk about any stuff like that. And I'm like, are you providing this data with it, or is it just like this Apple format 3D thing that's only supported on the Vision Pro, and then if anyone else looks at it, it just down-reses it into like a HEVC file, or I don't know.
I guess we'll find out. I kind of got the vibe that they're probably not going to have this on day one, because why would they need to? Like, these phones come out in September, Vision Pro doesn't come out. They say early next year. Who knows? Like, Vision Pro's probably going to get delayed, if I had to guess. So like sometime next year, like, I bet this feature is not going to come out of release.
They were definitely talking about the Vision Pro like it already came out. They're like, people love the Vision Pro. It's been a huge splash. Like, no one's touched it. What are you talking about?
There are like 10 people that have used it at those developer lab things. That's about it.
In a very controlled environment.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, you should never buy a phone based on like future possibilities, but I think that's a pretty cool one.
Yeah, so 15 Pro Max, from a camera perspective, which is the only thing I care about here, hugely interesting.
Yeah. So real quick, I guess, what would you go with between 15 Pro, 15 Pro Max? Like, ignoring the screen size, thinking just about camera features, which would you go with?
Oh, geez. I mean, like, before you said ignoring the screen size and just focus on camera features, even though I said it earlier, I by default am just going to get the biggest phone. But if I was like out there shopping and I'm picking just based on focal length, I think I would still go with the Max, because I think it's interesting to have that much reach on a phone, and that's something that's kind of been out of reach or whatever for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I would still pick an ultra wide over the telephoto. If I had to choose between like, here's an ultra wide that also does macro, and here's a 5x telephoto, I would pick the ultra wide.
Yeah.
But they all get that.
Yeah, you don't have to pick.
I would rather have the reach of a zoom, because that's kind of what phones are missing. Is like, you just can't take that thing really far away.
I think you're probably right. And I know for me personally, my phone, the max I can do is a 2x. And I use that a lot because like you want a picture is punched in. And to me, one of the things that I look for in photography is getting like detail shots, because I'm so used to people just taking a picture with the normal camera on their phone and like it's just a super wide angle thing. And I think it really stands out if you can get like a detail thing. So I don't know, like I'm really interested in the 5x, but you can't make these decisions in a vacuum. And if it's a phone I'm going to be using every day, I have to decide if I want the bigger screen. So I don't know which one I'm going to get yet. Yeah,
that's a tough call. Yeah. And for me, it's like, if I'm going to zoom in with my phone, I want to be able to zoom in as far as I can.
Yep.
And that's the only times I'm really using the telephoto on my camera, is like whenever I'm like, I want to get as close as possible. And so for me, it's like obviously 5x, and I use a max size phone now.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
yeah, I guess it's
Mo screen, better. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Nexus 6 ruined me.
Well, that phone was huge.
That phone was enormous. It's still bigger than this phone that I have now, because it was 60x9, not like whatever the extra long screens. Man, that thing was a whale. And I had that thing for like 3 years. And
you imprinted on it. Your hand actually got bigger as a
that's what it
result
was.
of having that phone.
Yeah, I love that phone. I think it was great. It was still one of my favorite phones because it was just so stupid and giant. And ever since then, I was like, before that, I'm like, why don't they make small phones? I have this like 4.7-inch Samsung Galaxy S3, and it's so huge, and why can't I just have a small phone? Apple's the only one that makes small phones. And then I got an Nexus 6, and I was like, big phones for life. So yeah. If I was gonna upgrade, it would be a Pro Max.
Yeah,
15. Yeah.
Well, I've got until Friday to decide. So
I mean, like, you could wait, Daniel. Like, what's the rush?
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Okay, like, so you're gonna get a Pro Max, and
a good chance
you're probably gonna get it in. Well, I mean, what are the color options here?
Well, they've got
gray, and gray.
They've got 4 shades of gray. Colors are really disappointing on the Pro phones.
Yeah.
Like the non-Pro has some brighter colors, and it's disappointing that the Pros are. But they've got a natural titanium, which is like a like a metal gray color. They've got a dark gray. They've got a white gray, and they've got a blue.
Okay.
Dark blue.
That blue looks like the blue that came from the 12 series.
And normally when I've gotten these phones, I've gotten whatever the color is.
Right,
like my current phone is like this greenish sage type color. It's kind of cool. But I don't know. I'm between that and the natural titanium because I do kind of like that metal look. But I don't know.
Man, that's tough. The titanium thing, like it being lighter, that's a pretty big deal. My phone is annoyingly heavy.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, but also it's annoyingly heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think actually like if you have a 14 Pro, the 15 Pro, or if you have a 14 Pro Max, or sorry, let me rephrase that. If you have a 14 Pro, the 15 Pro Max weighs less.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty huge. I don't know. I like white phones. I think they look really clean, but the stainless gets really, I don't know,
you get
fingerprinty.
Yeah.
It seems like this is brushed.
Yeah,
so if it was me,
brushed.
I would probably still go white, which is like, would be the third phone in a row that I got. No, fourth phone in a row that I bought in white, which is really, really boring.
That's like Casey List with cars.
Oh, geez. It's terrible. I don't know, man. I feel like the brushed titanium is probably the coolest version, but I could definitely see you going black or blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blue is hard to match with cases. And so if you're going to put a case on, which I don't know if you will, you're not really a case person, then if you're going to put a case on it or sticker, go black or go titanium. But if not, then I would say maybe blue.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. I do kind of want to go no case, but I don't know. Like that natural titanium's kind of drawing me in a little bit because it feels like a classic Apple product. Like it reminds me of the MacBooks.
It does.
So,
yeah.
we'll see.
I'm into it.
We'll see.
Cool.
I am going to get one of these because I'm currently on an 11 Pro that's 4 years old.
And broken in multiple ways.
Yes, it's time. It's time for a new phone. So I really am of the opinion that for most people that have like a 14 or a 13, like probably not really a meaningful upgrade.
Unless you're using it for your video shoots and you need ACES and log.
That's the thing. I mean, the video features are really impressive. So, you know, I'm excited about it. I don't think everybody needs to upgrade, but no. I think this is a pretty cool new phone.
Yeah, it feels like the consensus is like if you're on a 13 or newer, like just wait. It's not like, come on, you don't need to spend your money on something else. But if you're like 11 or older, it probably makes sense to do the upgrade.
But what if you have a 12 Pro Max?
No one said anything about it. I'm just like, how am I supposed to have an opinion if no one tells me what to think?
Internet in a nutshell. So thanks for listening to our podcast today, everyone.
Yep. All right, cool, man. We went way over. I started the timer as advertised.
Yep.
And we are definitely
we're a little over,
as they would say, over.
Yeah,
which is fine.
And we didn't even scratch the surface. I mean, we didn't talk about the Panasonic event. We didn't talk about the Sony event. We didn't talk about the Blackmagic event that's happening 2 days from now. Yeah, there's so much going on.
Jeez, what are we gonna do next week? Are we gonna are we gonna dive into Blackmagic? Because I feel like I could do 45 minutes on the Sony Burano.
I don't know. It kind of depends on what Blackmagic announces. Because if Blackmagic's like, here's another one of our video production things that you put in a rack somewhere and does some obscure thing, then we're not talking about that.
Well, maybe a little bit.
If they announce a full frame L-mount box camera, we might have to devote multiple episodes to that.
We're going to only talk about that camera of the year 2023.
So we'll see what happens. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
We do need to talk about the Burano at some point. I think that's a really interesting camera.
Yeah, it super is.
So hopefully we'll get to that next week. And then we probably have to talk about this new Panasonic Micro Four Thirds camera. So.
I'm really into it. I think the G9 Mark II is pretty cool, and it feels like a halfway point from a GH7, which is what we all really want.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I don't know, a lot of interesting stuff ahead. But that'll give us topics for a year or two of this podcast
easily. Are they going to release a camera though? I mean,
you talking about Panasonic?
No, I'm talking about Blackmagic. I mean, it seems super vague based upon the picture that they released, which just looked like a concert or like a worship at a church or something. Just very vague.
Yeah, I don't think it's Resolve 19.
No,
because 18.5 just came out. It feels too soon for that. And I mean, I kind of made that joke, but they have so much video production gear. I mean, we use the ATEM switcher things when we do live stuff, and they've got all kinds of rack mount video recorders and stuff like that. So it could be something like that. I really don't know. I hope it's a camera, because we've heard some rumors around there being an L mount camera from Blackmagic. And so, I mean, that's what I'd like to see. I think it'd be cool. I have noticed recently that some of the Pocket 6K and stuff have been on pretty aggressive sales, which is a little encouraging. We saw the Fuji GFX went on sale, before this event. And so maybe they're clearing some old stock, but we'll just have to see what happens.
I know. I want an L mount Blackmagic, super duper bad, but I'm going to say that it's not a camera.
What do you think it is?
I think it's either software or some sort of hardware that ties into.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
We'll circle back on that next week and see who was right.
Cool.
All right.
We got to be done, Daniel. That's it.
I think that is it. That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us. And if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.